is Tommy, and here we're transing so hard. Today I wanted to give a bit of an intro to what this channel is about and give you a little bit of a background into who I am. So let's start with transing so hard. Transing so hard is an idea I had where not only myself but other trans persons could tell their stories, share their information, share their knowledge, and to help people along the way. The intended audience for this is going to be, there are cis people, these are allies, these are people that were born and assigned a certain gender and throughout their life have consistently understood that to be their gender. It's also for trans folks being transmasculine, transfeminine, as well as non-binary, gender non-conforming, so people that don't fit along that male-female binary at all. So one of the things that I want to make clear, though, is that almost all of this is going to be, at this point, from my perspective. And my perspective is obviously that of a trans woman. So there is a lot of topics that I will be covering. There are a lot of topics that I will be covering that are applicable across the board. But when we get into things like hormones or into things that are more like surgeries or specifics to a masculine transition, I'm going to have less direct information, and I will try to bring in people that have better information and that they can share it with you. The purpose of this channel altogether is first educational. I want to share as much of the information I've got and get it out to people, because I know when I was first starting this, it was hard to find concise information. It was hard to know who to contact, where to go within the community, how to find resources, just what to do. It's scary, it's very alone, and it's just one of those things where the sooner you can get resources, the better. And being able to just find a number of us online, and you can look at any of the other channels that I subscribe to here, we all kind of have that same philosophy. We all have our own stories, and we all do it differently. Everybody's transition is different, so every single story is unique. So I hope you enjoy, and we're going to start with a bit of an introduction as to who I am and why am I doing this now. Why should you even listen to me? I don't know, because I'm awesome. But besides that, this whole thing comes about because I've been at this, I'm 44, I've been at this since I was probably specifically about 24. It's been a long journey, and it's been a hard journey, and in some ways it's been awesome, in some ways it's really sucked. And I just want to share all that information to maybe commiserate with some of you, to educate some of you, and to just help you along your way. So for me, who is Tommy with an I? Maybe you found me off Instagram, maybe on Facebook, maybe probably not on Reddit, but I'm out there and now I'm here. So the short version, like I said, I'm 44. At 42 years old, I had radical self-acceptance that I was a trans woman, and I went through the process to medically transition a certain amount of weight, hormones, name change, living full-time, your WPATH basic stuff. And I've completed my my GCS in April, and I'm healing up from that. And this whole journey is the 2+ years is nice and concise and fits in about 30 seconds. The long story is much longer, so go get something to drink and come back and have a listen, and I will tell you the tale of me. So when I was a child, I think the first inclination that there was some sort of what we would call gender euphoria, or that feeling of everything lining up, who you are and who people expect you to be, was when my sister and her friend dressed me up as their friend in her friend's clothes and took me over to my aunt and tried to pass me off as their girlfriend. I'm sure my aunt didn't buy it at all, but she's dead now, so I can't ask her. But she played along, and I felt amazing. It was super, super awesome. I didn't recognize what that feeling was. I just knew it felt amazing. I can look back, in retrospect, I can see that it was gender euphoria. At the time, I just thought that was really fun. I liked it. Not long after that is around the time when my father started to sexually abuse me. That is not euphoric, but what it did is it really shaped a lot of my personal development, my emotional development, and the stunting of my emotional development for a lot of years. The sexual, physical, and emotional abuse that my father put me through, and my sister and my mom, shaped our family for decades. And that's something that, while it has nothing to do with me being transgender, does have a lot to do with how I dealt with it. And one of the things that I needed to do to deal with it was be an asshole. I was angry. I couldn't take it out at my dad. I internalized everything. Everything was my fault. It was very, very angry time through adolescence, and through high school. Just joined ROTC. I went into the military. While I was in the military, I joined to be an airborne ranger. Wanted to be the most high-speed hoo-ah I could be. I might have to edit that out, Cheryl. So, okay, look for that. But being in the military and getting there and starting training made me realize that no, that aggressive masculine culture was not something that I appreciated, that I excelled at. And I went to a different unit that was more ceremonial, difficult in its own way, but it was not as hyper-masculine. Now, living in an infantry barracks in peacetime, it can be ridiculous, but it was not run around thinking how much you could enjoy killing people. After I got diabetes in 1994, I was discharged medically from the military, and I started living my life. One of the things that I did, and this is all relevant, you might see why later. After I got diabetes, I got out. I was in a very bad place emotionally, mentally, and I found IRC, Internet Relay Chat, and when I met the group of people there, I was able to communicate really openly with a lot of people about a lot of serious issues. So I had this support system that I had started building up, not even realizing that I was building a support system. So that was about 1996 when I started talking there and meeting friends. And one of the cool things about IRC is people don't know who you are physically. They don't see you. They only know what you type. And I pretty much, I presented as myself emotionally and mentally. And I will tell you that the people later in life, when I came out, that were the least surprised were all of my IRC friends. So that kind of brings us to 1999. I was working for a company. They were having a Halloween party, or actually Halloween in the office that day. And my girlfriend at the time suggested that I go dressed up as a woman. And I think for her it was a fetish for me to be dressed as a woman. And for me, I was like, well, if we're doing this all in. So I got a nice wig. I worked on hair removal. I practiced my makeup for weeks. I did all of these things. I did my nails. I got everything, all of the trappings of stereotypical feminine behavior in appearance and such. Got a wardrobe, got a little black dress, some pumps, way too tall of shoes actually, and I presented at work that day as a woman for Halloween. Most of the people I worked with weren't paying attention. They were programmers, COBOL at the time, and most of them didn't notice I wasn't there. They just assumed that I was gone and a new female intern started, which surprised the hell out of me. Now, because of diabetes, I was much skinnier then. I was much more slender. But I could pass a little better, even if my mannerisms weren't very great. What I found at the time, though, after that day was, wow, I really, really enjoyed that. and it wasn't a sexual fetishization. It was comfort. It was comforting to do that. So I started what I do with everything. I went online and I started researching. I joined some. At the time, it would have been transsexual groups on IRC, found news groups, and I think Susans.org is a website with resources was available at the time. But in 1999, the terminology was very different. Either transgender was a word. It was a word that some people used, but not that I came across. And so my options, being what I presumed was a man who liked to dress as a woman, my options were I was a cross-dresser, which meant that I just man wearing women's clothes. I was a transvestite, which was a fetishization and getting off on wearing women's clothes, or I was a transsexual, which means I was turning myself into a woman physically. And that was kind of it. Those were the choices. The term at the time was trannies, and that's come to be a very derogatory term for a lot of people. If you are a cis person and you're thinking you can use that word, please don't. It's not yours to use. But it was one of those things, like at that time, I came out to my mom and said, Mom, I think I'm a cross-dresser. She just looked at me and just like, I don't want a gay son. And I was just like, okay, sorry. And I told my girlfriend at the time, like, yeah, I really, really liked what we did for Halloween, and I want to do that more often. And she's like, nope, I didn't marry. I'm dating a man. I only want to date men, so bye. And so she broke up with me. And that kind of scared me right back into the closet. I didn't really get a chance to crack my egg, but I did a lot of thinking. And a lot of that thinking had to do with, I don't want to be a man dressing as a woman. I want to be a woman dressing as a woman. And the only way I could do that is if I take hormones and if I have surgery. And in 1999, my job security was pretty poor. I didn't have the resources. There's no way I could have made that happen at that point in my life. Also, I was very emotionally fragile. I didn't have the mental capacity or emotional capacity to put up with the pressure, the societal pressures of what that would have done to me and my psyche. So I did the next best thing, which is where all the broken toys go, and I joined the goth scene because I found out that there was a place where I could wear corsets and skirts and long flowy things and be as feminine as I want, and it was a club that just the week prior had closed down, so I was a little disappointed there. If you're in the Phoenix area, that was when the Atomic Cafe shut down. And so I found another club that was pretty near my house actually, and started going. And I started meeting a bunch of lovely people who really were quite okay with androgyny and a little bit of gender blending and cross-dressing, so long as you weren't an asshole. And even sometimes if you were still accepted so long as you looked the part and liked the music and didn't hurt people. And it was lovely. It was very lovely to be included in that. And over the last 20 years, I have grown to really love the people and my friends in the goth community. We do a lot of conventions and cruises and all sorts of things with the goth friends and have a great time with them. So that is now my scene. And that's something that was good enough for me for quite some time. But I'd say, 5-6 years ago, I was falling out of doing much of anything within the goth scene. We'd go to conventions, but we didn't go to clubs anymore. I didn't get a whole lot of chances to express myself through the way I dressed. And I was starting to gain weight because I was taking better care of my diabetes. And it was something that I still had it in my head that, well, if I can't be a beautiful woman, I can't be transsexual. There's no way I could transition if I'm going to end up ugly. And I think that was kind of also in the background when I started going down a pretty good spiral, getting rather suicidal, a lot of ideation, a lot of practice, setting up scenarios and making sure that I could go through with the pieces. And I kind of given up on life. And I went to the VA where I get care for diabetes. And I talked to my counselor that was trying to help me with better habits for diabetes, and expressed to her that that day I'd been sitting there with my pistol in my mouth, dry firing it. And she was like, okay, well, come with me. And she took me down to mental health and started getting me into a number of therapies for PTSD, for anxiety, and major depressive disorder. So a lot of these things that aren't necessarily tied directly to being transgender didn't necessarily help how I dealt with things in my life, because being transgender was always there. I just didn't know it. So I spent the next 2-3 years just going through therapies, mindfulness, cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectic behavioral therapy, EMDR. There's a couple of other modalities in there, one-on-one counseling, group counseling, and a lot of drugs. Tried Wellbutrin and Zoloft and carbamazepine and sometimes all three at the same time. Was on a lot of medications, and eventually my mind started to clear from a lot of the background noise. Around the same time, I was laid off from my position that I'd had for about 16 years at a company, and I had a lot of time to myself and a lot of time to think. And during that time I was laid off, I could go get my nails done, and for the previous 3 years I've been growing my hair out. I'd kicked around in those previous 3 years the idea of transitioning at work, and the position I held was one of authority over a lot of blue-collar jobs, and it terrified me that I would not be able to do my job effectively and run those teams if they did not respect me because I was transgender. So again, I sat on it for years for that. Finally, in April 2017, I got a new job, and within 3 days, I had looked up all of their policies on LGBT and transgender issues and all these things that were already implemented within the computer-based training. And about 2 days after that, sitting on that, waiting for my logins to roll in so I could actually get started at my job, I had that moment of radical self-acceptance. And for me, that self-acceptance meant, if I'm going to do this, I am transgender, and I am going to come out, and I'm going to live as me, and I'm going to do all of this, and I am going to start hormones, and I am going to have surgeries, and I will transition into a woman, and I no longer cared if I was a beautiful woman. I just needed to present to the world that I was a woman, so that they could treat me as I knew me to be. That was hard. That was a really hard moment because it took a lot of work. So the next step was coming out to my wife, which was very, very challenging. It took about a week of her having bad days, me trying to find a time. Let me tell you that 11 o'clock at night on a work night is not a good time to come out to your wife or your husband. It makes for a very long, sleepless night. And she always used to say, no matter what. And I was testing that quite a bit. But it had to be that, part of my radical self-acceptance was that I am coming out, I am doing this, and if anybody in my life is not along for the ride, I still need to do this. So this is the most selfish thing I felt I'd ever done, was to actually be myself. So that worked out. It was hard. Because I knew that when I came out, I was also going to be moving towards a goal of transitioning medically and having surgeries. I started very early with my hair removal process, starting with laser hair removal, getting into electrolysis really quickly. By June of 2017, I had started on hormone replacement therapy. getting rid of the testosterone, adding estrogen. And over the next few months, just removing testosterone started to make physical changes in my appearance. Hair started growing back, some softness in the skin, a little bit of reshaping, breast growth. It wasn't until probably September or October that I had measurable levels of estrogen, and that made things amplify even more. I was waiting at work to change my name legally because I had to have the email address had to be my name, and it had to be my legal name because it's in the healthcare industry. So for record keeping, they wanted it consistent and auditable. So I didn't want to come out at work and be asking people to call me Tommy while my email address always had my wrong name. And so I waited until it was legally done. I did that in November of 2017, and immediately after that, my insurance paperwork got updated, and I started shopping, looking for a surgeon. That was in December 2017. I got scheduled with a surgeon out in New York, and that schedule was for September 2018 for my preoperative consultation. During that time, during that window all the way around was pretty exciting. A lot of things going on in my life, with my friends. Wasn't easy. I'm going to say I didn't lose many people, but everybody backed away. Some other people came forward, and that was lovely. But my entire friend group just kind of expanded, and I think everybody was just thinking they were given us room. I don't know, but they haven't come back yet, so we'll find out. After that initial consultation, though, with my surgeon in September 2018, I went to the Transgender Day of Remembrance here in Phoenix and met a bunch of people from a local support group. And so November 2018 is the first time I went to a good support group and met a whole bunch of other people just like me. We all had very individual, unique stories, but they were all just like me. And it was pretty amazing. It was really cool. And I've been very active with that group since, and I've met a lot of friends and a lot of people that have been very helpful. By April 2019, at the end, I had gender-confirming surgery, and which included, vaginoplasty, labiaplasty, orchiectomy, penectomy, and total change down there. And I am still working to decide if I'm ever going to consider breast augmentation in the future. So throughout this all, though, what I found to be very important was that the things in my life I used to build support for my transition, and I didn't realize I was doing it. Hanging out in the goth scene gave me strength to come out in ways that you might not expect. In most of normal society, goths are seen as freaks. Goths get made fun of, catcalled, heckled, and it kind of gives you a little bit of a tough skin. So coming out wasn't a big deal. I've already been yelled at, called faggot from across the room, and door slammed in my face because they were so afraid of me because I was wearing a skirt. Like, I used to get yelled at because my hair was red. Went to the VA and my hair was a bright blue, and an old guy just coming at me, just what the hell? You think it's Halloween today? Just like, no, but it should be. It gave me a lot of mental toughness doing that. Having been in the military, while it wasn't the greatest experience, the VA support afterwards, they've been great with my HRT and helping with mental support. The people in my life that I have gathered, while we might not all be super close, they all accepted me for who I am. And if they don't, they simply don't talk to me, and I don't know that. But, when I said, if anybody needs to leave, I understand. I won't like it, but I understand. But if you can't accept me as who I am, you gotta go. I haven't really lost many people from that at all, and that's very amazing to me, because so many people have some very hard stories. So the most important thing was getting a support system in place that I didn't even realize I was building, and using the tools that I'd learned throughout life. So in some ways, starting at 42 makes it a lot more challenging. HRT has a lot more work to do when you're that far away from puberty. Physical changes take a lot more time and a lot more effort. And it was difficult, but I know that the first time in 1999 when I tried to start this journey, I'm pretty sure I would have failed and probably would have ended up dead. So, all in all, I think it's worked out. What's left to do? Well, what's left is to advocate so that anybody else that's sitting there wondering, sitting alone, looking at this YouTube videos with the right tags and coming across my videos, can see that even later in life, it's possible to transition. If you're younger, I want to be able to give advice of what to do and not do. If you're looking for some information on hormones or some medical things, I can give experiential information, where to find resources, and hopefully we can have some fun along the way. And I hope that you join me for future adventures, and I have no idea how to close this video.
Just smile for a bit.
I'll just keep talking. Thank you very much for watching.